Okay, welcome back. We're in Module 1 and we're all the way down to Section 3 where I want to take a few minutes and go over the screen itself with you so that when we do start working in Module 2, which is the Getting Started module, you'll know what you're actually looking at and kind of where to go for different things. So let me go ahead and flip over to a blank document in Microsoft Word and we'll get started with that. Let's start at the very top and work our way down. The first thing I want you to notice is this bar that goes all the way across at the top, which you'll have in any program, and it's actually called your title bar. Your title bar always tells you the name of the file that you're working in and the name of the program you happen to be working in. Now in Word, your generic files that you start creating are called documents. You'll see that once we save this a little bit later and give it a name, this will change to whatever name we give the file. Let me just tell you a little bit about compatibility mode as well. If you're going to be sharing this document with people who have an earlier version of Word, or maybe they work outside of your organization and you don't even know if they use Word, then you might want to leave it in compatibility mode. And this way, other people who are editing parts of the document that may or may not have some of the same types of things we have in this version won't have any issues. And let me give you a good example. In the last two versions, we have a new font called Calibri right here. Well, previous to that, the font was Times New Roman. We didn't have Calibri. So sometimes people couldn't see the text if we had used the new font, or they might have other issues with the file. So as long as you leave it in this compatibility mode, then you'll be good to go. And that option is under the options for Word, which we'll get to in another module when we go through that. So just know what compatibility mode is. Now I want you to notice on the left side of your title bar, you have your quick access toolbar. You have several buttons that are here automatically, but you can actually edit these. Here is your undo. You'll notice that I can't use it right now because I haven't done anything, but as soon as I do one thing, I'll be able to access this. Undo will be your best friend. If you make a mistake, just undo it. Here's your redo. So if you go back too many when you're undoing, you can redo and bring them back. Here's your email button. Now let me tell you what's really nice about the email button, which has been here, by the way, since the beginning of time, and a lot of people didn't realize that. But normally, if I'm going to email something, and by the way, it only works with Outlook, okay? But let's say that I'm going to create this file and I want to attach it to an email and send it to someone. Normally, you would create the file, you would go through the whole save process, close the file, you'd flip over and open Outlook, create a new message, attach the file. You can see there's a lot of steps there. With this, it lets you just click on this button. You will be inside of Outlook automatically in a message, and your file will already be attached. All you'd have to do is address it and send it on. Here's a quick way to print your document, and here's a quick way to save it. Now you can edit these buttons if you want. You'll notice that when I click this down arrow that I've got all these other options that I can add, or if I don't want one that's there, I can just uncheck it. So those are just quick buttons that you would use on a regular basis. That's all that is. Now the next thing I want to point out are your tabs that you have across the top. You have File, Home, Insert, all the way across. And you'll notice when you click on any tab that you have a ribbon below. So the terminology is tabs, ribbons, and these are buttons on the ribbon. So you'll get familiar with where different buttons are as you start working. Now you'll notice when you're looking at your ribbon that you have groups of buttons. For example, this is the font grouping. This one is the paragraph grouping, and so forth. Some groups, not all, have a little arrow on the bottom right. And if you click the little arrow like I'm doing here, you'll get some additional choices related to that particular grouping. So you just close with the X at the top right if you don't want that window. Now let's go down and look at this. Right here, you have what looks like an L, but these are actually your tabs. Later you'll learn how to set tabs, but notice if I just click here that it'll rotate through the different tabs that are available. You'll see there's several different ones, and again you'll learn how to set those later. You should have a ruler across the top and a ruler on the left side of your page. You'll notice that where the ruler is gray, that's an area that if you were typing, you couldn't really type there because that's what we call the header area. So right here, see that 1 at the very top there? That indicates you have a 1-inch margin from the top of the page down. I can double click in that area and now I'm typing in my header, but normally just typing on the page, you're not going to be able to type above where the white is on the ruler. You'll also have the same thing up here. See how there's a gray part of the ruler here and then way over here as well? That's going to be the edge of your margins there where the gray in the ruler is. Notice your ruler will go to 6.5 inches here, and like I said, you have a 1-inch margin at the top down. Also, notice these. These are your indents, and you've got one over here, and so we'll learn how to use those a little bit later as well. You might notice that when I'm pointing my mouse under the ruler and above the page, I have these double white arrows. And when I double click, I'll hide or show the white space. And the white space is basically the margin area. So see how I hide or show it when I double click? That's all that is. You also have a scroll bar on the right, and if you don't see your scroll bar when you're working, it's because you're not clicked in your page. So sometimes it disappears unless it thinks you really need it. Now if you looked at the bottom left of your page, notice it says page 1 of 1, 0 words all the way across. That's going to be what we call your status bar. It's letting me know that I'm on page 1 and I only have 1 page. Also I have 0 words, so you can see that. Now all the way on the right hand side you have 3 different what we call views. You have read mode, which I'll click on that. And read mode looks just like this. If you had text in here, you'd just be able to read it and not do a whole lot more with it. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to the bottom and I'll click the middle one, which is print layout. And that's the one that normally you're working in. And also I just want to point out the web layout view. If you happen to be setting up something that you're going to be putting on the web for some reason, you'll want to do it in the web layout view. If you know anything about HTML language, that's hypertext markup language, the computer can't read internet language and vice versa. So you need to put it in a language it can actually read, and that's what HTML is. So try to do those types of things in this particular view. Now the last thing I'll point out at the bottom is your zoom. So notice that I can slide the slider in or out to zoom in or out in my document. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up this particular section of your overview of Microsoft Word in the screen itself. I do have one more thing I want to talk to you about in this module, and that's the backstage view. So why don't you go ahead and look at section 4 real quick.